Welcome to the Thriving Artist Podcast, where we share strategies and support for artists to thrive.
We know that the art world can feel like a lonely place, and we want to provide a network of support, impactful strategies, and an abundance of encouragement to help you grow your authentic art career.
We're your hosts. I'm Jamie Smith.
And I'm Kaylin Butine, and we are also the co-founders of the Thrive Together Network, a community of female and non-binary identifying artists and artists who are caregivers.
We truly believe in community over competition, and we're so glad you're here. Enjoy this episode. Welcome to this episode of the Thriving Artist Podcast. I'm Jamie Smith, and I'm one of your hosts, and normally I am joined by the lovely Kaylin Butine, but today I'm going to share a topic near and dear to my heart, and it's just going to be me. So this episode is how to get the most out of your precious studio hours. So I've had many studios over the years, from my kitchen table to outside of my home studios. My current studio is in East Vancouver, so it's about a 20-minute drive from my house. So I think a lot about studio time. My studio is a drive, and with everything else I have going on, I do feel like my studio time is precious time. I realized over the years that I actually have a way better studio day when I have a plan and an intention. So it's quite new for me. I'm definitely a planner, as we all know. But it wasn't really until the virtual art residency last year where I literally had to plan my studio month and make milestones for each sort of week, because we met every week. And I realized the power of actually planning the studio time out. And so when I thought through this episode of how do I get precious time out of these studio hours? How do I think about studio time? And I really realized that I actually kind of have this 4-part creativity loop. So it's sort of these 4 parts. I want to walk you through them, and I'm hoping that the way I'm thinking about it might help in how you think about it. You might take some part of this, you might leave some part of it, but I am excited to share. So this creativity loop is really rumination, preparation, production, and return. So first I start with this rumination phase, and this is this part of this loop, and it's really about thinking. So what I do is I really spend time way before I go in to actually make anything is really about thinking. And this will happen in mundane life things like walking the dog, cooking, cleaning, driving is a big one for me, journaling, wherever I am that my mind can wander and play a little bit. I love, for me, acknowledging that this exists and doing this actually makes me feel really excited that all of this non-studio time, I am contributing to my overall art practice. And that is really comforting for me, because there are definitely seasons where studio days just aren't in the cards. And I know from a lot of our members that happens, and you can get really down. And so thinking about rumination as this time that I am an artist, I'm contributing to my career, I think that is a really exciting thing. So I realized that I actually do a lot of rumination time before making, and it's a really important part of the process to really get clear on my concepts and sort of where I'm headed next in my practice. So the next phase of this loop is preparation. So this is especially important for me because my studio is a drive. It's also, my studio is located with no art supply store nearby. It's really, to me, if I am not prepped and don't have materials, it means that it could be a waste of a whole day and that precious time. So I really want to be organized. It's happened before where I've forgotten something, and it happens, but it's better if I have some preparation. This also really includes food for me. So I need to make sure that I'm organized and coming prepared so that I can just sit down and get to work, which is really why I'm there, which is exciting. So a way that I actually prep for studio time, so I have my rumination time, I'm thinking, but I'm also actually prepping. So I draw a lot on my iPad to figure out compositions and ideas. before I actually go in to sit down on my expensive paper and start drawing. So I love that on the iPad, this is a technique that I can use to actually prep an entire piece so that when I arrive, I just start. Because I really struggle with staring at a blank page. I feel like it's the dreaded blank page. I feel like the blocks come in, and I just feel like it's where I get down on what I'm doing. And so for me, I want to make sure that I'm intentional and I have this place for my creativity to thrive because I have a plan, and it's not going to allow the inner critic to come in and take over. I know my next steps, which is really, really good for me. So for me to get prepped, this preparation creates this studio plan because I've prepped these things to get ready to actually physically go to the studio. So the third phase in this loop is production. So I have been ruminating my ideas. I have my materials prepped, which means I basically have a plan because I know what I want to work on. And now I'm ready for this production part of the process. And I feel like this is easy. This is now just bringing all these things together, whereas in the past, I've really struggled with sitting down there at this blank page and what do I do? So typically we don't really use words like production in our community. It just feels like there's so much noise around productivity and it's all wrapped around your worth and what you produce. And I just typically don't like it. But for this creativity loop, I actually realized that production matters to me when my precious studio time, when it feels very precious. If I have a lot of time in the studio, I feel like that word production doesn't matter as much. But for me, this whole creativity loop is really when I'm trying to get the most out of these precious hours. And I really like that I feel like I pushed my work and furthered my goals when I'm in this loop. Another thing when I'm talking so much about planning and production, I'm sure it can kind of sound like I'm saying you shouldn't go to the studio and play and explore. And, this production loop is around what you're going to produce serious art. And I don't think that at all. So what I love about this idea is, and what I've been doing is that I will have play time and I will have exploration time, but I go into the studio with intention for that. So I will go to the studio thinking, I want to try these new materials. I will have those materials with me. I will prep. I will have my plan, and I'll spend those hours actually experimenting. And I feel like that is a really positive thing rather than in the past, I've been feeling without going in with an intention. It's very torn around, oh, I want to try these things, but I need to get things done. It's sort of this heavy cloud. Instead, there's an intention of play, and I really can get into it then. I really feel like when you have a bad studio day, it actually can be really detrimental to a project or idea or even your creative, health, because I look at the studio as like the gym. It's very hard for me to get there often. Sometimes I crave it and I really want to go, but I know when it's hard and I get there, I feel so happy when I'm there. I feel so happy after. It's all these sort of things that we do to take care of ourselves. It's hard to get ourselves there, but it is so wonderful after. And just like the gym, if I get injured or have a bad workout, I find it 10 times harder to get myself back there. So that's also how I look at the studio. I'm like, this is so important that I have a good experience. It's so important that I have a plan because I want to keep this momentum going. I want to keep having good studio days, so I crave going back. This inner baby artist that I'm protecting here, I need to make sure that she can show up and do good work and not feel overwhelmed and doubtful. So, to finish this loop, because it's only 4 parts and we're ruminating, we're preparing, we're producing, and then our final phase is this return. So what I mean by return is creating a meaningful kind of way to plug back in. How do we get back to the studio and feel really excited about that? So I often, at the end of that studio time, we've talked about this in other episodes about having this sort of ritual, this idea of this return piece that you do every time, and that's how you tie it up. I also like to make sure that I have a project that is halfway done, parts of it are done. Maybe I know what the next step is. I'll even stop a little bit and be like, I'm going to save this for next time. I want to have this midway point that I can come back to really easily and just get to work. What is the re-entry point for your creative work? So I think you should really consider this as you're wrapping up your studio time, looking ahead, making a plan. You can write things down. This is what really, because this step then propels back to the loop, the rumination. Basically, my return, when I'm planning my return, I want to be like, these are the things I need to think about over the next week before I'm here again. I want to plant these seeds in my mind. I want to write them down. Maybe I need to give myself some homework and be like, before I come next time, I need to make sure I have this plan for this part of the drawing on my iPad. So that return is really powerful because it keeps that loop going, it keeps it feeding, and then you're right back to the top of the loop. I feel like this revelation of how to get the most out of my precious studio time has helped me a lot. I can't always physically be at my studio, but I want to still always be participating in my studio practice. So I really hope that this is helpful for you. Take some bits, try them out. I'd love to hear how it goes. You can see us on Instagram at Thrive Together Network, and of course our website, thrivetogethernetwork.com. Join our community, and we talk about all of these types of things all the time because we're all little beautiful artist butterflies, you know? So thank you so much for joining me today. I wish you full, joyful studio days where you develop your work and you reach your art goals. That is my wish for you. And as always, we are here for you. We are cheering you on, and we believe in the work that you are doing as thriving artists.